Good afternoon to all of you. I'm going basically to deliver the terms of reference of what I was asked to share with you. I've been in the oil industry for 40 years, so I'm going basically to share with you what throughout my professional life I understood are and could be the ways of maximizing value in the relationships between NOCs and IOCs. And how are we doing that in the company I manage? I was going to say once upon a time, but that was in the 70s when I started my professional life. I started working for a company called Lagovain. Lagovain was an NOC, was a company that is now the part of Petróleos Venezuela. And in those days, we did not know that it was an NOC, that name didn't exist. And I remember the days in the late 70s, beginning 80s, where the producers fundamentally started thinking about how could they ensure markets for their production. We are talking about the 80s, after the two oil crises of the 70s. I remember the days where Lagovain, now as I referred, Petróleos Venezuela, started to set up joint ventures in the Northern Hemisphere. And I simply referred the ones I've been involved with. 3 partnerships in Europe, one here in London with BP, another in Stockholm with Neste Oil, named Ninas Petroleum, another in Germany named Ruhr Oil with Weber Oil in those days. Those were 50-50 partnerships. I actually been personally involved in these 3 joint ventures. The objective of those joint ventures was really satisfying a need of a NOC that wanted to secure markets and partnering with companies that had markets and had a need of trying to securing supply. That was the really starting point for those partnerships. All of the 3 partnerships I referred to were 50% partnerships. Of the 3, one is still alive. One is now a partnership between a Russian company and BP. Another is integrated in BP. So, and those objectives were achieved. I clearly remember the days how we considered in the downstream business that having a stream of crude oil with the same origin would help us to optimize the refining slates, obtaining more consistency in the products that we would get squeezing from the refinery assets. In my view, those partnerships had a strategic fundamental behind it. A set of companies had resources and lacked markets. Others had markets and didn't have resources, and they're partnering to put them together. In the mid-90s, I went back to my country. I'm, by the way, Portuguese, and I run at this moment a Portuguese oil and gas company named GALP Energia. In those days, when I went back to Portugal, I was running an NOC, a national oil company, fundamentally, but with origins on the market, not on the production side. The job I took was to try to push the first phase of privatization, which was successfully completed, and the major target was to ensure that we simply had a return of assets that was similar to the IOCs. That was achieved. More recently, this decade, in the company I managed, the company was then privatized, was quoted in the stock market, is now what we could call an IOC. But internally, we do not consider ourselves an IOC. We do not name ourselves with these letters, but if we have to choose ones, we would name them. We would name ourselves as a NIOC, neither a NOC nor a IOC, an IOC. What do I mean by that? It would be a national-based international oil company. This is what we are today. We, at this moment, the company GALP Energia, the Portuguese oil and gas company, operates our activities reach out in about 65 countries with physical operations in 14. So we have in our DNA the NOC DNAs or NOC ingredients and the IOC reality. And in developing our growth, we actually have been set up highly fruitful relationships with the NOCs, and I'll refer to them later. We've got at this moment at least 30 partnerships with NOCs, and I will share with you how successful these experiences have been. But back to my terms of reference. After this introduction, I was told to address a question, and the question is simple. Mr. Oliveira, tell me what are the lessons that you learned from the Macondo incident, and what are the implications of that spill in the NOC-IOC relationships? The answer is straight and simple: none. As you probably are aware, the major issue that came out of this unfortunate spill had more to do with the relationship between oil companies, independently of whether they are NOCs or IOCs, with contractors, rather than the relationship between themselves. A thing we learned, let me tell you, is that in our industry, and the ones that are with their feet on the ground every day, is that the relationships between the oil operating companies, whatever they are, with their providers of services and contractors imply more involvement of the owner of the assets, and not let the contractor freely pursue the operations. We compare that with what we do in a downstream business, if we move from E&P to downstream. In an upgrading project our company is now actually completing, we manage, as any other large contract, about 200 contractors operating on site. Most of them are small and medium enterprises. What we do with these, probably I'm sharing with you what you do in your companies. There is no contractor that enters the site without training, without tests, without safety training particularly, and environmental training. And this is what needs to be, at a different scale, overemphasized in the E&P operations. But back to the partnerships. The company I manage today, we are involved in upstream activities that total exactly 55. We have 55 activities in E&P throughout the world, and they are all of them partnerships, or consortiums as we call them. Of those, 30 are partnerships with NOCs. 25 involve NOCs and IOCs. What do we bring, how can we extract value from those partnerships or consortiums? We wondered whether we are inventing in our company a new way of managing or participating in these partnerships. We strongly believe in knowledge-based partnerships that are stronger and more valuable than operating-based partnerships. We are fortunate to be involved in world-scale E&P projects, particularly in Brazil and Angola, and we are not operators in none of those large-scale projects. But we believe that we are creating value in partnerships with the local NOCs by being an active partner in those consortiums. Active partner in what way? Not only in project management, but essentially in knowledge sharing. We would say that a company is as valid as the worth of a company is a function of what it does as it is of what it knows. And I think we not being operators in large-scale projects, we can create value by sharing what we learn from one project to the other, what our R&D people can contribute to the success of those partnerships. Lessons that we learned. I heard the word TUPI from the past presenter. We are associated with the largest discoveries in the frontier of geology and I would say with recourse to the frontier of technology. These are the TUPI, the Iracema, the Yara, Júpiter, Bentvi, and Caramba discoveries in the ultra-deep offshore of Brazil. We've been there since 1998, actually with the first concessions awarded to our partnerships in which we are part of in 2000-2001. I simply say that we are delighted with the way how these partnerships are managed. We highly respect the competence and the leadership of Petrobras in this area, and we feel absolutely sure that that we can contribute for the success of those operations by selecting specialized niches of competence and deepening our understanding of those niches of competence and contributing to the success of the operations. This is basically what we think, that how can a market-based company and a reservoir-based company, how they can complement each other, sharing markets, sharing know-how, sharing resources. Another idea that comes to my mind today when I see the levels, I'm moving to the downstream business, the levels of our refinery margins, particularly in Europe today. Probably you are aware that benchmark refinery margins have been nearly negative in the last year. And that is happening, and probably with a dark future ahead of us. And we see, and these are assets, infrastructure assets that exist in the world, in the Northern Hemisphere, that are, I would say, underutilized, because otherwise they would not operate with such a low level of margins. And I see simultaneously NOCs building refining capacity. I wonder where it is the time for the NOCs to invest and participate in partnerships with the refinery operators in the north to produce the products that they so much need, and using existing assets, avoiding huge investments that do not create major employment in every corner of the southern hemisphere. Another area of cooperation that I believe could be successful is in research and development. I've met throughout my professional life many leaders of NOCs, and every one of them, if you talk with them, they care about human resources and knowledge. Human resources, we'll come to it later, but knowledge comes from research and development, particularly those that are involved in the frontier of technology. It is an area where there is a give and take. If the companies that have ability to push technology ahead are prepared to share their methodologies, the substance of their knowledge with the NOCs, I am sure they are willing to learn and capable to learn and capable to develop the same competences. So if there is this true research and development partnerships, they could then lead to partnerships that could be operational both in the markets and in the reservoir, in the production side. And that could lead to the national-based NOCs to ensure security for their markets, and for the market-based entities security of supply for their markets. For that to achieve, we need to develop trust. Throughout my professional life, being on both sides of the table, one thing I can share with you: there is no real trust between the entities. Each one of the type of companies is always looking at what the other can take from us, whatever the side you are. And if we manage to develop that trust by sharing knowledge and sharing training, I think we can do a good job for the industry. I conclude my small summary of these terms of reference referring to human resources. The countries where we operate lack some lack human resources to face the challenges that they have embraced. One of them, Brazil, has human resources and competence, but the explosion of growth is such that they absorb any talent that is available. So what are we doing in our company? We belong to the Portuguese-speaking world, which has been blessed by geology, because most Portuguese-speaking countries, except Portugal itself, have high geological potential. And what are you doing? We are trying to train, develop professionals that speak this language, share them with our partners, and make sure that through training, through joint postgraduate studies and courses, and make sure that through that we can deepen the relationships with our partners. So in short, I believe that can be if the relationships between NOCs and IOCs are structured, are frank, are truly cooperative, they can lead to fantastic fruits. I am a testimony, and the results of our company are a clear indication of that by having this attitude in the world markets, we benefit from them, and that benefit is a win-win relationship between ourselves and the NOCs that we are related with. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you very much, Manuel. We might have an opportunity for a quick question. Does anybody here want to ask the President of GALP anything? I just had one thought. Is there no one out there? I just had one thought about your cultural history, as it were. A Portuguese politician once said to me that Spain and Portugal went out and took over bits of Latin America, and we got the best bit, said this Portuguese politician. Is culture important in the relationship between an NOC-IOC and an NOC-IOC, or between these two countries?
I do not want to generalize because I'm not competent enough to extrapolate our own experience. I have no doubt whatsoever, and I emphasize, I have no doubt whatsoever that in the relationships that we have with the NOCs of the Portuguese-speaking countries, culture is a major contributor to our success. I have no doubt whatsoever. If anybody tracks the performance of our company, I think we owe a lot of it to our ambition, to our hard work, to our talent, but also to the cultural link that exists between Portugal and Brazil, Portugal and Angola, Portugal and East Timor, Portugal and Mozambique, and other similar countries. Yes, culture is.
And it's been very successful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.